Max Verstappen caused a sensation when Red Bull launched him into F1 at the age of 17 with just a year of car racing experience under his belt. While pundits and ex-drivers chastised Red Bull for putting someone so young in a racing car, the FIA rushed to rewrite the rulebook to prevent it from happening again. The opposition, however, will not come even close to stopping the Dutchman's sensational skill set from entering the sport. And now, 8 years and 2 world championships later, it's fascinating to look back at the early years that nurture that generational talent. So, what was it about Verstappen's upbringing and early career that made him one of the sport's all-time greats, and how did he catch Red Bull's attention at such a young age? Discover this and more in this video as we take a look back at Max Verstappen's journey to the pinnacle of motorsport. If any driver deserves the moniker born to race, it has to be Max Verstappen. The son of an F1 racing father, Jos Verstappen, and a karting mother, Sophie Mary Kumpen, who raced against the likes of Jarno Trulli and Giancarlo Fisichella, but his racing roots go even further, with grandfather Robert Kumpen, who competed in international endurance kart racing, and great uncle Paul, who's the founder of the Belgium team PK Racing and a former GT racing driver himself. It's no surprise then that Max quickly became interested in karting. Max was only 4 years old when he entered the popular Minimax Championship, where he spent the next 4 years gaining valuable wheel-to-wheel combat experience. By 2006, he was ready to move on to more difficult battlegrounds. He won on his debut in the Belgian Rotax Max Minimax class and repeated the feat the following season in his home country. Having raced a CRG kart in his youth, it was unavoidable that a genuine customer team would sign him up due to his impressive results, not just his family name. And that happened in 2009 when Team Pex signed him to race in the Flemish Minimax Series and the Belgium KF5 category, where he won both while continuing a rigorous physical conditioning regimen. Moving to international karting in 2010, the Dutch teenager was signed to the CRG factory team and pitted against more experienced British-tied driver Alexander Albon, who had already won 5 karting titles. Verstappen added to his already rising star by finishing a deserving second behind Albon in the KF3 World Cup, then defeating him in the WSK Euro Series at the end of the year. Verstappen was already establishing himself as a talent to be taken seriously, irrespective of his father's F1 background. In 2011, he attacked the WSK Euro Series once more, before switching to the Intrepid chassis in 2012. Moving to KF2 and KZ2 classes was a big ask for a teenager under so much scrutiny, but he won the KF2 Master Series and the South Garda Winter Cup by edging out CRG's Felice Tierney. It was at this point in his racing journey that one story stands out to the Dutchman and is mentioned in numerous interviews. The event was the KZ2 World Championship final at Sarno, a track near Naples in the shadow of Mount Vesuvius, and Max was making his first foray into shifter karts. He immediately looked very competitive against older, more experienced competition, but then there was the mistake. After a burned out clutch in one of the early heats, he finished 10th in the pre-final. Then, as he made up those 10 places to take pole position for the final, the hot Neapolitan sun caused his rear tyres to overheat and blister. That meant that when they decided to change the tyres for the final, the grip will always take a few laps to return. And when Daniel Bray, a much older kid from New Zealand, sped past at the end of the long straight into Sarno's sweeping second corner, Max decided to seize the first opportunity to repass his rival. Even now, more than a decade later, he recalls his reasoning for diving up the inside of Bray in turn 8. "I was like, you know what, because I'm so quick, I'm just going to pass him and drive off into the distance," recalls Max Verstappen now. "But when I went for the move, it was a bit optimistic and we touched and I retired. So the World Championship was gone just like that, which to this day would have been the easiest race of my life." He walked back to the pit lane after being unable to rejoin the race, but his father Jos was nowhere to be found when he arrived. So he trudged off toward the 100 or so tents where the karts were prepared before each race. Back in the paddock, Jos was already packing everything into Verstappen's van. Max still recalls Jos's exact response when he asked his father to help him retrieving the karts from the track. "You can pick up the go-kart, I don't care," Jos said. "I'm not helping you." Max turned to 2 of his best friends who helped him retrieve the kart from the side of the track and return it to the van just as Jos finished clearing everything away. And so the Verstappens began their 1,100-mile journey home, while the World Championship continued without them. Max wanted to explain what had happened and discuss the error with his father, but Jos was not having it. Of course, when we sat in the van, I wanted to talk to my dad about the incident, Verstappen remembers. My dad said, "Stop talking, I don't want to hear anything, just sit in the back, I don't want to hear anything about it." But of course I kept on trying to have a conversation until at one point he pulled off at a fuel station and said, get out, I don't want to hear you anymore." So he kicked me out and he drove off, and this is in the south of Italy. Jos has since explained that just leaving Max at the gas station was never his intention. He said that he was aware that Max's mother was just a few minutes behind on the road and that he had always intended to turn around and return. 10 years on, Jos's style of parenting would probably be categorized as problematic at best. Max Verstappen's subsequent success provides Jos with some vindication, but it's also telling that the gas station story remains Max's go-to when asked about a low point in his junior career, and that he remembers so much of that weekend so vividly. It's difficult to argue that those experiences didn't have some negative impact on the teenager, but they also undoubtedly shaped the excellent work ethic that propelled him to F1 stardom. Verstappen's return to a CRG kart in 2013 proved to be a watershed moment. He won both the European KF and KZ championships, as well as the KZ1 World Championship, which he won by 3 seconds over Charles Leclerc. He also experienced the karting equivalent of GP2 in the SCUSA Super Nationals, finishing 21st in a respectful debut for such a young driver. But it was his unrivaled international success that ensured all eyes were on him when he switched to racing cars the following year. The question was, which series to start with? Formula Renault 2.0 would have been an obvious next step for a 15-year-old fresh out of karting. He drove one at Pembrey in Wales and later at Jerez in a car run by the competitive Josef Kaufmann racing team. The team had previously fielded Gerhard Berger, Sebastian Buemi, Nico Hülkenberg and Esteban Gutierrez, and had won the top Formula Renault 2.0 Eurocup Championship in 2011 with Robin Freins and Stoffel van Dorn. In the Jerez test, Verstappen compared favourably with the Formula Renault regulars, and he beat several better-known drivers in another outing at Valencia. Verstappen's experience in a Formula 3 car at the end of 2013 convinced him to aim higher than Formula Renault. In 2014, he'd compete in the FIA European Formula 3 Championship with the same Van Amersfoort team that his father had driven for 2 decades before. Before that, however, the Dutchman made his circuit racing debut in the USA. He raced in the Florida Winter Series against the likes of reigning European F3 champion Rafael Marciello and Formula Renault 2.0 Alps champion Antonio Fuoco. The series didn't crown a champion, but Verstappen won 2 of its 12 races, with his breakthrough triumph coming at the Palm Beach circuit. Verstappen was still 5 months away from his 16th birthday and a full year younger than all but one of his competitors when the European Formula 3 field gathered at Silverstone for the first race of the 2014 season. However, after starting 4th on the grid on his first attempt, a clutch problem stymied his getaway and forced him to retire early. Technical problems were a theme of his year. He failed to start race 4 at the Hockenheim Ring, but his 6th start in the championship produced a breakthrough victory later that weekend. The following 2 triple-header weekends, however, were largely frustrating. He clipped the barriers at Pau and had another clutch issue at the Hungaroring, as well as a penalty for exceeding track limits. When the championship reconvened at Spa-Francorchamps, however, Verstappen opened the floodgates to victory. He produced a stunning clean sweep of victories on this ultimate driver's circuit for the first time. Surprisingly, he repeated this dominant performance at the Norris Ring, a tight short street circuit in stark contrast to the vast expanses of Spa. With 6 consecutive victories, it was no surprise that his name was now being linked to F1 teams Red Bull and Mercedes. At the Moscow Raceway, championship rival Esteban Ocon responded with a hat-trick of his own, while Verstappen visited the podium twice and retired again, this time because his alternator failed. But when Ocon endured a pointless trip to the Red Bull Ring, Verstappen failed to capitalise after receiving a contentious penalty while battling for Fuoco. "I guess you're not allowed to race anymore these days," Verstappen fumed afterwards on Twitter. "It's absolutely a joke what they decided." However, this proved the last time Verstappen's F3 car ran in its distinctive black and orange colours. Red Bull had seen enough, and they shocked the F1 world by announcing Verstappen as their next F1 driver at Toro Rosso before his next race. Verstappen's chances of winning the F3 title were severely harmed at the Nürburgring. After winning race 1, an engine failure forced him out of race 2 while he was leading, and the resulting power unit change resulted in 3 consecutive 10th-place grid penalties. That put Ocon in a good position to win the championship in Imola, which he duly did. But Verstappen, who had just made his Formula 1 debut at Suzuka, stole the show in race 2. Relegated from pole to 11th, he climbed through the field to pass Antonio Giovinazzi for second as they crossed the finishing line. The pair separated by less than 0.02 of a second. Despite finishing the year with more wins than anyone else, 10 to Ocon's 9, Tom Blomqvist edged him out for second in the point standings. He made his final appearance in an F3 car at the Macau Grand Prix, where a qualifying race crash put him 24th on the grid for the main event, in which he climbed to a strong 7th, setting the fastest lap on the way. Unfortunately for Verstappen, most people's first impression of his racing career was that he crashed an F1 car during a demonstration run in the Netherlands shortly after his Red Bull drive was announced. It appeared to support the view held by some that Red Bull made the extraordinary offer of an F1 driver to Verstappen in order to keep him from signing with Mercedes, who could not offer an immediate promotion to Grand Prix racing. Red Bull Motorsport director Helmut Marko, however, explained that they acted quickly because Verstappen is a once-in-a-generation talent. He went further, comparing the burgeoning talent to Ayrton Senna. And despite being too young to even hold a driving license in his home country, Verstappen addressed his critics with the wisdom and presence of someone twice his age. At the end, the age is just a number, and it's on the track where you have to show. I think driving wise it shouldn't be a problem, it's more everything around it. What's most important is that you have to be fast on the track. Well, in his first 2 F1 races, Verstappen has proved himself well prepared for the opportunity he's been given. At the age of 17, the Dutchman became the youngest person to start a Grand Prix in Australia, breaking Jaime Alguersuari's previous record by nearly 2 years. Engine problems forced him to retire from that race, but the following one in Malaysia, he set another record by becoming the youngest driver ever to score a point. Now, 8 years after his Formula 1 debut, there have been countless examples that have only served to prove Helmut Marko's Senna comparison correct. How can we forget his sensational Red Bull debut at the Spanish Grand Prix, where he took advantage of a collision between Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton to become the youngest driver ever to lead, set a fastest lap and win a race, a record that is unlikely to be broken anytime soon. Or his miraculous battle with Hamilton in 2021, with the pair's wheel-to-wheel battles and frequent contacts culminating in one of the most exciting and controversial season finales, as well as one of the most memorable years in recent F1 history. And don't even get us started on 2022, when the Verstappen-Red Bull combination was a dominant force on par with Michael Schumacher and Ferrari, finishing the season with a record 15 wins and 454 points. And now, 8 years after making his Formula 1 debut, Verstappen returns in 2023 in better shape than ever before. Who will be able to stop him? Only time will tell, but one thing is certain, it won't be easy. So, what are your thoughts on Max Verstappen's meteoric rise to Formula 1? Was the FIA correct to rewrite the rules to prevent this from happening again? And was Jos Verstappen's parenting style problematic, or did it contribute to Max's success? Please let us know in the comments down below. Now, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe and click the notification bell to be notified of our next uploads. Check out our other videos on the screen right now as well. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again soon.